Murdered moms in Oklahoma, Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley. According to new court documents, one of the four suspects in custody, Grandma Tifany, she's the grandma of the kids, she's caught in a bitter custody dispute. We've talked about it. Well, she gave a recorded statement to investigators after her arrest saying she was responsible for the murders. Talk about a bombshell. Prosecutors also say that court docs show Grandma Tifany and her co-conspirators had their eye on the judge as their next target. Here to help us break it all down, what this could mean for the suspects, we've got former FBI agent and NewsNation Law and Justice contributor, my friend Jennifer Coffendoffer, and back with me again, attorney Misty Maris. All right. Thank you both for being here. Jennifer, first of all, by the way, I found out over the weekend from Jennifer, she's actually from this part of the country. So she has a very, very intimate knowledge of this area. What did you make, Jennifer, of Grandma Tifany's confession? Did you see that coming?
I kind of did, and let me tell you why I say this. Usually the people that seem just the most evil and the people that are in charge of kind of putting the whole scheme together, they're often the ones that actually go ahead and confess. Why? I think it's because they know this day is coming. Listen, she seems pretty dumb in how this was all planned out and all the clues that were left that led to her. But Brian, she knew she was going to get caught, and I think she knew that when she got caught, she was going to confess.
I want to read you, Misty, the part of this this new court document where it basically talks about the confession. It says that she did provide a recorded statement to law enforcement indicating her responsibility for the death of the deceased. So indicating her responsibility for the death of the deceased. I had to read that like 3 times this weekend. I mean, should we read into that, Misty? Like, they didn't just say she confessed. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, it seems to say that she took responsibility. Now, without the details, we don't know exactly what she said in that confession. But there's a couple of things in the document that I think are worth pointing out. Number one, they said that she confessed in a recorded custodial interview. That means she was in custody at the time. So is this the first step in what we see in these cases where there's co-conspirators turning on each other? She's the one who's going to confess, maybe in exchange for some form of leniency down the line. Or when her defense attorney is assigned to this case, do they start to challenge whether or not that confession will ever hear the light of day in a courtroom and say that perhaps there were rights that were violated or that it's not admissible ultimately in court? That happens all the time. So I think before we know exactly what the meat is, it's hard to say what's in that recorded statement and what the impact is going to be as the case proceeds.
And every time I see these pictures of Grandma Tifany, I think back to just seeing her in court last week. I was in Oklahoma. I was sitting like 4 feet from the woman because it's such a small courtroom. I mean, she looks so much different now. I mean, these are really flattering photos. She's much more hardened. Jennifer, what did you make of the fact that she apparently said she knew the way the judge walked home? I mean, what does that mean?
Certainly very concerning, because it makes it clear, really, that they had an alternative plan. If this plan didn't go forth, I think the judge could have been next on that hit list.
So, Misty, back to the confession, Grandma Tifany has technically pled not guilty at this point, but now we learn about this confession on a recorded, interview with police. Why plead not guilty and then at the same time be confessing? How does that make sense?
Well, she pled not guilty. She probably hasn't had time to really get down with her lawyer and talk about what the next steps and implications of that confession are. As I said, the confession is going to be reviewed by the attorney, and there'll be a game plan developed, whether or not they're going to try and challenge it or whether or not they're going to use it as some sort of leverage to gain some favor with prosecutors. So it's really a little bit too soon to tell exactly what that means as far as how it's going to impact everything else. But there's one thing I do know, Brian. Whenever there's co-conspirators, at some point, usually they turn on each other. So is she the one to turn? I did not see that coming. I actually love Jennifer's perspective. I always thought it would be someone who had a less direct motive in the case who might come forward in this group, but seems like she's the first one to tell the story.
What do you think, Jennifer? I mean, do you think she could be turning on the others? How do you think that'll play? I mean, Tad is, of course, her boyfriend, but could she, be looking out for herself at this point?
Well, what I think, Brian, is based on how well planned out this was, the cell phones and all of the deliberate planning and how they were able to plan this out. She planned this part also, this confession. And
Mm.
I agree with Misty, is for a reason. We're going to find it out. I like the idea of possibly trying to gain favor. The problem is, though, she's the head. She's the head of the snake. She's the reason this all happened. So I don't know if it'll backfire. Remember, Oklahoma is a death penalty state.
Yeah, it is, and that's already come up at one of the hearings already. That they've brought that up. Misty, what do you think will happen? I mean, do you think this is a death penalty case? Do you think the prosecution will go after it?
It definitely could be a death penalty case. You're talking about a double murder that was obviously premeditated and planned very, very specifically. So I think there's absolutely a chance prosecutors, that's an aggravating factor right there, the fact that you have two murders. So prosecutors do have the ability to go for it. And again, that's exactly the type of leverage from a defense perspective. You want to get the death penalty off the table. How do you do that? Well, you're the one to give information that goes to that head of the snake, that goes to the mastermind, and tell it all, spill everything so that the case against that person is airtight. So the death penalty certainly is a factor. And in this case, it certainly could be applied.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.